Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live. Christopher Ludwig here, Editor-in-Chief, for those of you just joining us, and for the rest of you, I'm sure you're sick and tired of me now, but we are not done because we still got a lot of great content today, right now, and indeed tomorrow as well. We've had a bit of a theme today around new mobility, startups, which will continue, and new companies coming into the supply chain, and also, I think it's fair to say, new partnerships and relationships and companies that support each other the new way. And that's going to be an interesting part, I think, of the session we have coming up. It's another electric vehicle and battery supply chain session. As I said, we're pretty much having an EV conference within our conference over these 3 days. But this session is a bit unique to the ones before. We're talking with a really exciting new manufacturer who's come onto the scene and is really just in the process of putting the finishing touches on its supply chain. Lucid, which has just launched the production version of a really exciting model and is working closely together with a company many of you will know, but not necessarily in the form that they're working here, Glovis, in some new partnerships with Lucid. So that gives us real scope to dig in and also to look at the finished vehicle logistics side of the supply chain. Not the only focus here, but I think it's going to be an interesting and new focus for us in this session. So I'd like to introduce the panelists that we have with us. Pleased to welcome Greg Henninger, who heads up logistics for Lucid. Charles Franklin, many of you know, is now at Glovis America, and Victor Araba, also from Glovis America. They're going to join us for some lively Q&A and interactivity. Welcome, gentlemen. It's great to have you here. All of you, I believe, tuning in from the U.S. West Coast. So I'm glad we can meet in the same time zone, transcending sort of time and space here. Welcome all. I want to start with Greg because Lucid, although it's a name that is becoming, getting to be better known, I still think it's somewhat newer to some of our audience, if you like, than before. So, Greg, why don't you give us a little overview of where Lucid is right now, given you've just had the production model launch. Tell us a bit about what stage you're at in the development of your supply chain.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. And as luck would have it in our virtual world, my neighbor decided it's time to break out the leaf blower. So we might have some background noise, and my dog might even join in with this stream. So try to be nice to everybody's ears here. Appreciate the chance to talk about Lucid. I hope everybody saw the reveal last week. If not, obviously, my plug, head over to the website and check it out. It's an amazing vehicle. For those who didn't see it, we're in the process of launching our sedan named the Air. We've also, in our supply chain, we've also talked about the SUV that'll be coming out. We also supply battery packs to Formula E. Our supply chain is very similar to a standard automotive supply chain. Right now we're moving from the planning stage to the execution stage. With Beta 2 coming to an end, and we're moving quickly into and through Beta RC, release candidates right now. We're going to use RC to get ready for SOP, test all the processes, test the system linkages. So right now we're in the process of a massive shift from planning to execution. And that you'll see that across not only our supply chain and logistics side, but the manufacturing side and every other part of the company as well.
Okay, really interesting, and of course interesting to hear about some of the different business models even within that too. I want to talk a little bit about, because as a kind of kickoff into some of the way we'll run this session, a little bit about the approach you're taking to logistics and supplier relationships. Given it's a new organization, a new company, were you making decisions about which operations or which functions to keep in-house versus those you might outsource? And given your size and all that, and you've obviously also worked with other OEMs of different size, so what has driven some of those decisions as you got started out?
Probably the key component is time. In your larger OEMs, which I was a part of course, you have more people and more time. The event horizon, the planning horizon is much longer. We have a very shortened launch window, and it requires us to partner with talent, bring that into the company. I couldn't possibly hire the talent necessary to launch a logistics and supply chain network in the time frame that we're going to launch the vehicle. So it's really incumbent upon me to go out and find the very best partners for each independent piece of business that I have, whether it be inbound, outbound, warehousing. And strategically, we've decided to limit the number of partners that have a global presence and that bring certain attributes to the company that we require.
Okay, absolutely. So, kind of on that subject of perhaps decisions around, core functions. Let's bring some of our colleagues from Glovis America into this. So, if I can start, maybe Charles, but Charles or Victor on this question. Your core customer has traditionally been, as we know, Hyundai, Kia, and you've worked with other car makers too. But my understanding that this relationship with Lucid. This is something, some of a new direction, I think, for Glovis, right? Maybe represents something of a new approach. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've approached this as a 3PL?
If I may, Victor. Well, it's new, but it's not new at the same time. And what I mean by that is, as you know, Glovis is the provider, as you stated, for Kia and Hyundai, but both of those developments fundamentally were like startups. They were new to America, so the outbound logistics supply chain we had to develop from the beginning to the end. And so that's the similarity between this activity as well as with our historical partners. The difference is that this is new and exciting, and the slate is clean. So even in comparison to our existing partners who are legacies and they come in with their ideas and their plans, Lucid is younger and more innovative. And so we have a clean slate and we're able to access all of the industry knowledge from folks like Greg and his 20 plus years experience, Victor with his, I think 15 plus years experience, and mine. So, and there's a multiple of people on both sides, both at Lucid and Glovis, who can who can input that and create a brand new program with trying to avoid some of the mistakes or legacy constraints that we have all experienced.
So perhaps, and maybe Victor, you can take on this one. Tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing with Lucid. What are the services you've taken on, particularly on the outbound side, and how are you approaching that? Charles can answer too, but can we bring Victor into that? Yeah, there we go. Let's bring Victor in.
Yeah, thank you. Just to quickly add to what Greg said about traditional LSPs and what Charles said about Hyundai supporting Hyundai and Kia. We move approximately 1.5 million vehicles a year, so we have that traditional network in place. But being Lucid being a newer company, being a startup, we had that challenge of putting that startup hat. But we do have internally divisions, innovation divisions. We have engineers, we have applied mathematics majors that are working for us, that are helping us with analytics and Power BI. With that said, taking that knowledge base from a traditional LSP and utilizing our innovation team and that additional manpower that Greg was alluding to, starting a project of this size, being able to bring in many different departments to be able to plan and develop and support Lucid's goals on delivering their vehicles in time, starting in next year of 2021, but also supporting their initial build this year, which is coming up very quickly.
Mm. And so, maybe for Greg as well here, at what point does Lucid's outbound vehicle logistics organization kind of end, if you like, or perhaps begin, and Glovis take over? So how do you work together? what's the handover points? What is sort of some of the scope of what you're doing? Maybe Victor, you can kind of give us a perspective from Glovis, and I'd like to bring Greg in for that too.
Yeah, so we when we started working with Lucid earlier this year on developing the outbound logistics process and flow, again, it's a greenfield site, so we didn't know where the handoff is going to be. We didn't know where the yard layout, how that was going to look like. So it was a collaboration between my teams and Greg's teams to actually develop those spaces: outbound yard, VPC yard, the handoff. So from a traditional perspective of our greenfield sites that we've developed in the past, Montgomery, Alabama, West Point, and Philadelphia, we leveraged that knowledge to develop and help and suggest to Lucid how that would look like in their space. But it was really working hand in hand with Lucid on coming up with those ideas that's going to fit their time, their timing. There's the scheduling and the flow, even down to the jobs, number of jobs per hour, how big the building's going to be, how big the yard is going to be. So we were involved in all those aspects.
Fantastic, yeah, and so Greg, maybe if we can put Greg on screen here, just to get from your point. Yeah, we can have everyone on screen. Let's be one happy family here. Again, from your point of view, what was the kind of key advantages there? Where does that partnership kind of really take root from Lucid side and supporting your organization?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to what Victor just said as far as the partnership. I mean, and what I said earlier about the timing, when we first engaged Glovis, it was specifically to do the transportation, once the vehicle is loading the vehicle onto conveyance and then delivery to customer. It's evolved as things do. As we've progressed, Glovis has really stepped in to help us design our yard, design our the building that we have in the yard that's going to do the body wrap and the spacer installation. We are going to hand over the vehicle. Lucid Logistics will hand over the vehicle to Glovis at we do a walk around together at a charging station, and then they take it from there, and pretty much it's in their control until we get it at a forward destination center, a PDI location, and then we hand it over to sales and marketing for final delivery to the customer. But Glovis has really come to the table for us in supporting all of that effort. My team at the time is a team of one. Victor made it sound like I have a very large team. I would like to say that was true, but in reality, I had a team of one and maybe 1.5 if we're honest. So designing the yard layout, deciding where to put the lights around the yard to be able to work at night, working on the covers, and that's Glovis has helped a lot with all of that.
Yeah, if I could just throw in another piece, and I give kudos to Lucid and Greg and his team of 1.5, but they reached out, and something that was unique, I felt, coming from a legacy OEM, is that we were able to get involved early enough to say, is this a shippable vehicle? And so Greg was able to engage his engineering crew to say, hey, you guys, if we want to ship this vehicle the most cost-effective way, here are some of the challenges. So they actually brought one of their vehicles to our facility. They brought their engineering staff, and they actually got to see firsthand how the vehicle would be in the actual environment. And from my history, it's very difficult to get your engineering staff involved at that level. And so I think Greg is ahead of the solution by having those folks understanding what the car's environment will be when it's in transit.
No, I appreciate that, Charles. I'm going to piggyback on something Charles said. Getting our engineers engaged in a startup environment to do something of this nature where they're not even familiar with it yet. So your chassis design engineers, they might not understand that part of what we're going to ask them to do is help us design or help us modify the design of the car, proper loading on all the different conveyances or lashing, tie downs, and so forth. And then, of course, the vehicle dynamics while it's on the different mode of transport. So our engineers have had to come up to speed at the same time that the rest of the group, It's been a great concerted effort and a learning experience for everybody, at least on my side.
I mean, that is a really a key understanding from speaking to other OEMs. Of course, getting involved at that obviously design engineering phase is the optimal certain way, and it's good that could happen even with the first go. Is it going to start even earlier, if you like, or has it started even earlier with the SUV, with the next kind of model in the pipeline?
It's a good question. As I said earlier, time is always of the essence in a startup. Our compressed timeline. So we're at the forefront of that right now. As we speak, we're deciding how we're going to start to test that vehicle.
Well, I hope the team has grown slightly from 1.5 and to kind of help support that. But that's obviously part of why we have a partnership like with Glovis. Let's just talk a little bit about, I mean, the location of the plant. Obviously, it's a unique product, but it's also kind of a unique location, at least in the context of the U.S. industry in Arizona. This is something of a new production site. Does that have impacts? How does that impact on the network, on the processes, either inbound or outbound? Maybe start with you, Greg, and then Glovis can talk about it in terms of the network that they designed.
If you take it out of context for a second, Arizona by itself doesn't seem to be an automotive hub, and to be fair, it's not. But it is a very business-friendly environment, and it's got a great workforce. As we've found, we've been hiring rapidly over the last 6 months. The transportation network is very good, road, rail, and air, and we're relatively close to the Southern California ports. There is an added benefit. The FTZ treatment in Arizona is unique. I think it's unique in the nation, actually. The only drawback, in my opinion, is super hot in the summer.
That's interesting. So can I just ask, just as a quick follow-on to that, the FTZ aspect, FTZ is one either side here. So it's a free trade zone, and does that mean so you're able to get some benefits from the customs side and your holding? Does that actually impact materially on your material and supply chain flow?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it does have impact. It requires us to think ahead on warehouse locations that support the facility. Anything that's going to be in the material supply chain, we have to consider the FTZ impact. And as far as and this is something anybody can go out and put on the web. But as far as the impact for the FTZ in Arizona, there is the added benefit of a tax benefit, and I'll let your viewers search into that themselves. But it brings us back to what I said first. Arizona is very business friendly, and they're very supportive of bringing new business into the state.
Yeah, to add to Greg's comment about Arizona, Arizona is typically a destination for vehicles landing on the West Coast ports. So it's one of the furthest out that you will be able to truck vehicles until you would possibly put it on a train. But it creates a origin destination connection. Our breadth of, I mentioned 1.4 million vehicles shipped within the United States. It gives an additional opportunity for Glovis's carrier network to have a destination to return from. So vehicles delivering from our facility in Port Hueneme, California to Arizona, now they have a way to get back, basically. So it's developed the network for us and probably for others.
Yeah. And also, if you look, there are other alternative fuel manufacturers who are, if not in Arizona, which some of them are, but they're in that general region. So this may be, if you will, the new normal for production for the alternative fuel vehicles.
Yeah, indeed. Well, all that sun, right? So it'll no, but indeed, there's obviously in Nevada with the Gigafactory, and then we also know there's lots of R&D happening, right? So in terms of autonomous vehicle testing and advantages, and perhaps looking further down the line for companies like Lucid too, that so there's some interesting synergies that will come in the value chain as we go. So actually, Victor, you alluded to it there, but that's kind of what I wanted to ask as well. So how mixed into your network, your flows, your carrier base is Lucid, or the Lucid volumes? I appreciate they will start relatively small as a startup, but with the rest of your flow. So you also with Hyundai, Kia, and how you manage that.
Right. Yeah. So volume always poses a problem when you're building a network, and when you're a startup, and when you're small. The volume itself is sometimes challenging, but having the capability to our deep relationships with carriers, our tier one carriers, our rail carriers, we're able to mix that volume within our own network. But when we first developed the network design with Lucid, we had to take into consideration our carrier partners who would be best suited for these tasks. So a traditional procurement process of going out and ensuring that we have the right carrier partners, they have the right type of equipment, doing the advantage of doing the testing with Lucid in advance helped allow us identify which type of tractors were going to be used for this, enclosed and open as well.
Okay, fantastic. So, another aspect of this clearly is this launch and this phase has happened in the context of a pandemic. No news to anybody there, but Greg, and then from Glovis' side, how, if at all, did that impact the operational, the planning, and perhaps even the processes that will now follow? Clearly, there'll be some requirements that come with that too. But what impact and challenges did that pose for you? So I'll start with you, Greg.
There have been many, but because we're moving from planning to execution, the timing was, I dare say, the timing of this pandemic was good for us as far as, or at least favorable for us as far as the stage that we're in. I would definitely don't mean to say that the pandemic at any time is good, but as far as how it impacted us from a supply chain and logistics side specifically, we actually probably became more productive for a period of time. Quite a few less distractions. We entered into the work environment very quickly. Not being in production yet, I didn't have 200 people on the floor of a warehouse, or driving tuggers around a facility, or trucks on the road that we needed to monitor. We were primarily still in that planning stage of all, for all aspects, both inbound and outbound logistics. I guess our biggest difference was just the interaction with our teams. We didn't stop hiring during the pandemic or during the initial phases of it. We actually accelerated to some extent, and my thanks to all the brave people that accepted jobs at Lucid during the middle of a pandemic while they're in shelter in place and don't even get to meet their new coworkers. And therein lies probably our biggest challenge. Everything moved away from face-to-face to virtual meetings. Specifically to Glovis, we had our meetings prior to the shelter in place back in February and March, and ever since then, we've been doing what we're doing right here. We're meeting virtually. We meet virtually multiple times a week. We have true-ups at the executive level. It's once a week now, but it was twice a week for a while just to keep everything on track. So I think that is probably our single biggest impact. There have been minor impacts as far as supply base, depending on the region where our supplier was for our beta vehicles. Some of the suppliers were shut down for longer periods of time, but as they came back up, we expedited the shipments in, and we've kept everything on track for the most part.
Yeah, to echo Greg's message, we did meet in the physical state prior to COVID, but when we finally went into the project phase, setting up, it's an acceleration. It's an acceleration of that process from the physical to a virtual state, and it's actually again what it has made us more productive, able to bring in teams very, very quickly and react to our customers' requirements very, very fast. We have what I call quick reaction forces in our company because of the assistance of the virtual state. You could create a Zoom call in less than a minute and have everybody in the meeting room and making decisions and assisting with customer requests.
And then as we progress, we're moving very quickly towards the boots on the ground activity when they start producing. And so we are ready for that because during the pandemic, as you know, we operate facilities in Philadelphia, Georgia, California. And so we have protocols in place to mitigate the impacts of the virus on our employees. And so the day that Greg says he needs boots on the ground, we're ready to do that in a safe manner and make sure that his cars get out as planned.
What about as it's a pure EV, a battery electric vehicle, and I believe your other customers, maybe moving small volumes of that now, plans to move more. Actually, there was an announcement, in fact, yesterday, right, from the Kia side. But Lucid being pure EV, what has that meant? Or does that mean anything in terms of your network, in terms of your facilities that will be handling the car for the charging, for example, other processes you need to keep in mind? So I'll start with Glovis on that one.
Mm-hmm. When we were entering into the design phase of our network, we obviously did not have full information on what the Lucid Air was going to be. We had maybe the weight and the dimensions, but I think that was enough. When we started looking at how many vehicles can fit on one vehicle, due to the weight of the battery, it's a relatively light electric vehicle, but also the length of the vehicle and designing which tractors and which carriers have enough of that equipment to be able to provide that service from an enclosed and an open perspective.
And just piggybacking a little bit on what Victor said, it's going to be interesting with the growth and success of the EV manufacturers. I foresee a modification in these trailers because most of the EV units, with the exception of the trucks, are lower than traditional vehicles. And so if the truckers want to be able to accommodate these new vehicles, there will be some modifications required.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it could be different for the larger ones, although there will be weight issues for some of those too, because they do tend to be heavier. So there's implications there. Greg, now clearly across your logistics, across the supply chain, so inbound, and we know there's many variety of challenges around the handling of batteries and hazardous materials, etc. For you coming into this, so what are for you? Maybe if we focus for a moment on the outbound side, are there particular things that standards and etc. that you set, again, be it on the state of charge or on particular training, for example, that you need to ensure that your partners kind of follow to handle this sort of vehicle?
Of course. We, the big one is state of charge, and we've decided on what our state of charge for shipping is going to be. We've set the process up that Lucid Logistics will put the vehicle on charge and then hand it over to Glovis at the point that it reaches that level. You do have considerations as far as how does a vehicle. If a vehicle state of charge drops too low en route, how do you get it off transport at its destination center? So you do have to make sure that your network is set up properly from a charging standpoint, both at the origin and the destination. Beyond that, we could talk about the inbound side. Before I switch to the inbound side, we have the rules and regulations of shipping EVs has gotten much better. There's still some ambiguity in the in all the reading of those rules, but 10 years ago, it was a major challenge. It was likened it to Wild Wild West, quite literally. Nobody really knew what to do. Nobody knew what the rules were. They were being written and revised as we were trying to actually execute. We're a little bit more mature now. The regulations are more mature. There is some interpretation, especially on the inbound side when you're storing cells. The local officials look at the rules and regulations, and then they make their interpretations of those. And of course, then you have to abide by that. My philosophy, as long as we err on the side of safety, I'm comfortable with whatever path we're taking at that point. There's too much gray area, so we definitely, from our side, we will always err on that side of safety in transport and storage, whether it's inbound or outbound.
Yeah, absolutely. If we were to turn to, well, actually, I'll put one more to Glovis here because it just came in on the Q&A. It's reference to something I just mentioned as well about, that typically the EV vehicles are heavier, and so, does that impact on the position, body stress of the vehicle on the carrier, for example, where you'd position it, and will load factors be the same, with this? Now, maybe just give us some of your learnings on that, Victor or Charles. Also, maybe appreciate that again. Maybe the Lucid vehicle will be different to some of the other ones that come in future, but maybe if you can share some insights on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead, Greg.
From my perspective, the Lucid Air being a longer vehicle and it's such a low profile vehicle, that's why we conducted or assisted conducting a load test with Lucid early on. So helping them develop a spacer to increase the height. So that's one. The weight of the vehicle and the position of the vehicle on a tractor trailer, considering the length of entire trailer. Most typical trailers now are 80 feet in length, and the weight restrictions are still the same. So with that weight restriction, you could most likely get 5 to 6 vehicles on a tractor trailer nowadays, and then you have a less of a amount of vehicles on an enclosed trailer. So it does impact the position of the vehicle on the trailer and the number of vehicles on the trailer.
In addition to that, as I was alluding to, as far as the height restrictions, which was probably height off of the ground, and the length of the vehicle were the biggest factor. And so there are a number of modes of transportation that just were not acceptable. And so having said that, as these types of vehicles increase, the industry will have to adjust to accept them. I think secondly was the weight, if you're looking at trucking, because even though the vehicles are aluminum or alternative materials, the batteries themselves are significant. And so I would say that the number one thing was the height and the length combined, because, a longer vehicle has that crossover point. And then again, you have the weight. So there will be some impact.
So does that mean at the moment, at least, when you mentioned some modes of transport weren't really possible? For example, would rail be not particularly an option at this point?
Rail is an option, but tri-levels at this point are not acceptable. And then with bi-levels, let's just say 80% of the chocks work, but there are a few chock designs that are too high for you to actually be able to lock the vehicle down. And so with that, you're going to have to really monitor what chocks are coming in on that rail car, because you may send a rail car, and if it's got the wrong chocks, you're not going to be able to use it. And similarly, some of the fully open trailer designs, there was one of them we didn't even load because it was just too risky. And then there were a few where you might only be able to get 2 or 3 vehicles. And so naturally, that's not a good option. So basically, the challenges were fully open trailers as well as tri-levels.
It's a very interesting insight, and I think perhaps a cautious warning to the industry to kind of start thinking about this and adapting to it, because the volumes. I mean, if we talk about it here in Europe, maybe we're moving a bit faster because of not least regulatory driven, but there's still significant growth anticipated also in the US and North America. And so for some of that limitations on transport modes or on some of that equipment, which, as we know, takes a long time to build up and needs to last a long time to pay off. This is planning and work that needs to happen now. Just maybe, I know we're running towards the end, but I wanted to raise another topic, if I may, at least on the visibility and tracking of the vehicles in the supply chain. Now, this is, and maybe start with you, Greg, is if you, it's a technology company, and so I can't help but imagine that, there's expectations from a technology company in terms of, where things are and what's happening, and possibly also how you want your customers to see that. And so we know that the vehicle logistics industry hasn't necessarily been able to provide up to the minute real-time visibility. Is that a vision and a hope and aspiration for you, for example, and are there steps you're taking to get there? And then maybe for Glovis to talk about how you can help make that happen.
So I'll take the first part and I'll hand it over to Glovis. And you asked, Chris, if it's an expectation. It was not only an expectation, but it was a requirement during our sourcing process that we have real-time visibility. In today's environment, anything less is in my opinion, a failure. The technology exists. We just need to make sure we're applying the technology that's available. And to some extent, the industry is, and I hate to be stereotypical here, but it's behind. It's somewhat of a dinosaur yet. But overall, in logistics, we have very high-tech solutions that we need to be implementing. And when we brought Glovis in, that was one of the key requirements, is that they would have real-time visibility for all of our shipments while they're in transit on any mode.
So that's the requirement. So Victor, Charles, how do you make that happen?
Well, it's traditionally, logistics providers, you have the traditional GPS being used on tracking and tracing. That's been one of the legacy type systems. Leveraging on that technology and other types of technology that are already in the marketplace. Even your cell phone alone has some type of ability to provide tracking and tracing. So keeping up with our innovation team, as well as our own internally developed systems, we're developing apps that will be used in conjunction with maybe potentially some telematics of EV vehicles. But internally, we've developed our systems to accommodate that data connection with onboard system, with portable systems like cell phones, and integrated into a single-use app that's developed by our company. So that's some of the insight as far as how we're keeping up with the marketplace and the requirements of our customers.
And with that, the technology, as Greg said, it's kind of we currently are antiquated to some degree with automobile logistics, but that technology exists throughout the other logistics world. So having said that, as you know, we also do have a after-sales parts business. And so for our after-sales parts distribution center, we already had the real-time system in place. So basically, we were just modifying that exact same system to apply it to finished vehicles. And so, because we do deliveries to dealerships at night and 24 hours, and naturally, the dealer's always saying, hey, where's my part so I can fix this car? So basically, we're modifying some solutions that we already had in place.
Okay, then interesting though. It is a new application. It's a modification, as you say, but it's a newer application for the finished vehicle side.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And but I've preached this. You've heard me before. It's amazing how you can send a sheet of paper worth $1.50 anywhere in the world, and you go to one of the number of providers and you can see where it is at any given time. And now you take an expensive automobile and you say, where is it? And you say, well, I don't know. It left Cleveland a couple of hours ago, so it's probably, somewhere in Ohio or Michigan. And so that was with Greg, like he said, look, we want to treat our car better than people treat a $1.50 sheet of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is the key question here. You've used tried to use polite adjectives in some cases, whether it's dinosaur or archaic or perhaps antique. We might say classic, but we're moving into we're moving into the next phase of that. Let's round off the session with a couple of key objectives, perhaps for the supply chain, for Lucid supply chain and the partnership here. If we're here now in a year getting an update, what's the key milestone, from that side? And then I would like to look a little bit further out then too, if we're talking, 3 to 5 years, what's a key objective? So Greg, let's start there with the kind of short and the more medium term.
So the key objective, flawless launch, 0 claims, and perfect real result. That's my key objectives. I can't accept anything less than a flawless launch. Our customers won't. So at the end of the day, that's what we're all doing, right? Far out, next 2 to 3 years, that's a long time in an EV startup. To be fair, but I would say, we would continue to improve the processes and systems. We would look for reduction of cost, increasing efficiencies. I think adequate capacity to support the increased production in the outbound logistics side. That'll probably be critical for us. How do we understanding capacity is always an issue in the finished vehicle world. How do we address that as we ramp quickly?
Great.
And from my perspective, number one, in 3 years, Greg is so happy. He says we don't even want to talk to anybody else. But more importantly, and the thing that I think we have is adaptability, because with the, not only with Lucid, but with just all of the new startups, it was just adaptability. And so today we're shipping this car this way. Tomorrow engineering says this, and we say, you know what, we need to ship this car this way. And so I think all of the transportation providers have to, again, be adaptable and flexible and say, you know what, what's your issue, and make a solution, rather than saying, you know what, no, this is how we do it. And realistically right now, from the top of our executive management all the way to throughout the organization, we're adaptable. So every day when I come to work, it's okay, what do we got to do today? And if you have to adapt, you adapt.
Short-term goal is ensuring that the implementation is executed based off of our plan that we placed out. It's a daily job for Glovis to ensure that Lucid's requirements are met. And a year from now, or even after post-production, start of post-production, is ensuring that the implementation that we put in place is kept up throughout the entire contract. Mm-hmm. And then for of moving vehicles, there's a lot of new alternative fuel type equipment and power that's going to be available to the marketplace. So how well does our legacy equipment migrate to that new type of alternative fuel?
Exciting stuff there, and that that adds a whole other element to the sustainability and electrification side as it goes from the vehicle to the trucks, and we hopefully have the right equipment designed with the right dimensions to handle those new products too. Greg, Victor, Charles, thank you so much for your time today and joining us all on there. I hope everyone's well. I really wish you the best with the ongoing launch, and may it be as flawless as it's required to be. and everything visible in real time. We'll be keeping up with you on that and sharing insights with our audience. And to our audience, a reminder as well, that obviously make sure you connect with Glovis and with Greg via our platforms here. And if you have follow-up questions, please get in touch. We're also always happy to facilitate this as well. Coming up in about 15 minutes or even a bit less, 10 minutes or so, we're going to pick up further on some of the startup themes. We have a panel with Rivian, with Ineos Automotive, and also with Kuehne+Nagel, so a logistics provider who's getting into that space as well on the EV and mobility side. So the discussions go on. Lots of great insight to come, and also just another reminder that all of our content is being stored on demand. Not everything from today is up there yet. That will mostly be there, let's say, by tomorrow, but most of, or all of yesterday is already up there. Go onto the Brella platform on the schedule and click past content, and then you just have to click onto the session, and it takes you right there. So you can check out that content, everything you've missed, or anything you want to catch back up with, because there's so much great insight that we'll get as this session showed. So thanks again to our panel and to you, and we'll see you all again real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.